What's up guys, my name is Andy. In this video, I need to replace the brake master cylinder on my 68 F100. I'm also having a problem with the pedal assembly in the truck where the brake and the clutch pedal are kind of binding up a little bit and they're kind of sticking, and it's probably a good time to get that out and service those. And to take those out, you remove a lot of the same bolts that you take out for doing the brake master cylinder. So this is a good time to tackle both projects. So let's get started. And before we unbolt the master cylinder from the firewall, the push rod for the master cylinder sometimes can get stuck inside there. So it's easier if we just disconnect it from the brake pedal. So when we pull the master cylinder out, the push rod will come with it. Sometimes it'll pop out, but let's just skip that. Plus I have to take it all apart anyways. So we're gonna go after this nut right here and pull that push rod off of the brake pedal. Before we unbolt this from the firewall, it's probably easiest to disconnect the brake lines now while this thing is being secured. And because brake fluid is corrosive, I'm gonna put some towels in here just to catch any drips. Not that it's an issue, this truck needs a lot of work and a lot of help, but there's no point making an extra mess for myself. And I really recommend using a flare nut style, or a flare wrench, or whatever these are called, so that it grips the head of this good, and so we don't strip anything. Now we can go after these 9/16 or the socket here, 9/16 socket. And while we're here, we're going to go after these other 4 bolts that hold that pedal assembly in place. And because I have a manual transmission, I want to disconnect the clutch linkage from the clutch pressure plate and take that cotter pin out so I can pull, there we go, pull that lever out. So when I take the pedal assembly out of the truck, that bar will come with it and it won't be connected down here below the truck anymore. Now I can go after the last couple pieces. We got a bolt here on either side. This is all part of the pedal assembly bracket. Also these 2 bolts here that hold the steering shaft to the pedal assembly. We've got to get that loose. Then we're going to need to disconnect the brake switch from this little bracket here because it's all wired in, so we can just leave that wire hanging. But let's take it out first and get all this stuff out of the way. I guess I could have just unplugged it from there and we'll just do that. That's easier. There's a nut up on top here. You don't want to lose that. This guy right here. I'm going to save that. I'm not able to get this guy. I think we're going to take the instrument cluster free so I can get in there and get that nut off the back side of this. So once you take the 8 screws out of the cluster, you got to disconnect the speedometer cable from the back, pull it forward, then you can get in there and get this last nut off for the bolt. I went ahead and took the cotter pin out of the clutch linkage push rod just in case that it causes any problems trying to get this out. Maybe it might have been easier just to do this one, I don't know, but at least it's out of the way. I don't have to worry about it for right now. All right, so we got this out. What I ended up having to do was undoing the bolt that secures the steering shaft housing on the other side of the firewall so that I could slide it out a little bit to get this bracket away from this bracket because it was getting caught underneath the dash. And then I had to push down on it and twist this thing around. It might be easier to take this apart, and I don't know, I feel like I scratched up the steering column piece. I kept catching on the firewall, so you know, the protector there. And it was just a lot of work, and I don't know if I did it right. I mean, I got it out. That's the important part, but I might have scratched some stuff. So if you guys have a truck where you don't want to scratch anything, you might have to take this thing out all the way to get this out of here. Let's go put this on the bench and start taking a look at it. All right, guys, I was starting to brush all this off and get all the dust off here so I could take a look at everything, and that's when I noticed that. That right there, so that is the nylon bushing or the plastic piece that goes on the shaft between the two pedals, but it's supposed to be riding in this piece, not shifted over there. In fact, it's moved so much, it's actually gouged the metal of the pedal assembly housing. I mean, it broke this piece and started to move that way. Let's see if I can move it around like this. So if this is bolted up to the car like so, the shaft is supposed to be across this way, and I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit, but it's like this. So no wonder I'm having a problem with this pedal, is that it's just destroyed this house. I mean, this is not even this piece is trash now. I mean, if this piece was bad, well, I don't even, I mean, it's garbage. So looks like I get to buy another pedal assembly because there's just no way that that's going to get fixed. I mean, I guess you could weld up, you know, the sheet metal here, but then this piece is still destroyed right here. Awesome. Okay, and then you can see how this is out of alignment here with the stop. This is, wow. Okay, and then it's starting to bind on this side. And okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to chase down another one of these so we can get that done. All right, guys, a small change in plans. I was able to fix this pedal assembly by doing a Mustang Steve bearing kit in here, and I've got a whole video on that install and how I did all that. You can check that out on my channel. But the nice thing is I didn't need to buy a used unit. The short story is that a used one of these pedal assemblies and everything was about $200 to $300 for one of those, and that's no guarantee that everything worked right and everything was there. And it was only about $100 for this bearing kit. And this beefs up the system. It's much stronger, better than the, you know, those aluminum bushings and stuff that were in here. This is a much better system, so I'm actually happier that it went this way. So cool. So now we're ready to, and I also spray painted it black, just put a little bit of this Rust-Oleum stuff on here just to clean it up a little bit. But let's go ahead and get it installed back in the truck. All right, guys, I'm going to skip all the boring parts of getting this installed. I got to kind of take this thing and wrap it around here and flip it around and kind of arm wrestle it in here, and I'll get everything kind of put in place. Then we can pick it up from there. All right, guys, I got this thing put in, but I'm an idiot. I had to take this apart 3 different times because I couldn't figure out what bolts, between the bolts that go on the steering column here and the bolts that hold the steering or the pedal assembly up to the dash. And I was even trying to use the brake push rod bolt as it's been 2 weeks since I've had this apart, and I couldn't remember where everything went. So when you guys take it apart, just make sure you pay attention to where everything goes, because then you don't have to take everything apart 3 different times because you can't figure out what you're doing. Anyway, so what I have left to do down here is we need to hook up the clutch rod here. That's going to be a little bit of a pain to do it on camera, but we got to get this cotter pin pushed through there so I can do that. And then I don't want to do the push rod yet because I got to put the master cylinder in, and that's on the other side of the firewall. So let me go do that real quick. All right, guys, don't forget to put that cotter pin back in the shift linkage, the Z-bar thing down here if you took that out. So now I just got done tightening these 4 bolts that hold the top part of the pedal assembly to the firewall. But the next step is the master cylinder. We got to take care of that part. So here's the old master cylinder that was in the truck. And we can't just take the new unit and swap it in because we got to do a bench bleed to get the bubbles out of the system that's in here when you put fluid in. We take this lid off. If we put fluid in here, the brake fluid, we can't just put the lid on and then install in the truck because we're going to have air down inside the valves. So what we need to do is bench bleed this system. And the easiest way to do that is to get yourself one of these master cylinder bleed kits. I got this at an auto parts store for a couple bucks. They're not very expensive, and they got lots of different fittings determining, you know, depending on what kind of size you have here on the side of the master cylinder. I believe I've got the right sizes here. 2 hoses, and then this little clip thing that we're going to go in here that will just hold the hoses in place. And what we're going to do is we're going to put basically a screwdriver in here, put this in the vise, pour some fluid in, and then when these are hooked up, it's just going to pump fluid from, you know, as we move the master cylinder valve, as if the push rod was in there. It'll pump fluid throughout here and into there, and you'll see some air bubbles, and we just want to do that for a little while just to get all the air out before we put this in the truck. So now you can see we got this set up here. We've got the little piece that just holds the tubes in there, got some fluid in there, and all I'm going to do is just take this screwdriver, and I'm just going to slowly push in the master cylinder, and you can see how it's already pushing some air through there. So just do that a couple times until we don't have any more air bubbles. And I probably put too much fluid in here to begin with. I don't want this thing to overflow, but I'm just going to slowly again, I'm just taking this screwdriver and just pushing it in here just to get the air bubbles out of the valve. Take your time on this, and then when you don't see more air bubbles, then you're done. And you don't want to push fast. I'm just going to push just a steady push, just push it slow, but push it firm, and don't try to stop, you know, part of the way through. You want to push all the way to the bottom and then let out slowly. And then again, just firm, pushing all the way to the bottom, and you'll get all those air bubbles out. Now, I was finding that my tubes were a little too long, and so when I would push this out, I would suck air back in. Air would, you know, the air bubbles that were inside the tube would go back inside down the bottom of the valve when I would let the plunger out, and I needed to shorten up these tubes so they were a little shorter. Also, you want to make sure the ends of it are below the surface level, because if they're above the surface, then it'll pull air back in. You don't want that. So just a heads up on that, guys. All right, I think we're done with that. So we can take this apart and then get these little guys threaded out from in here. And then also don't want to forget to put the cap on, so we don't want to spill this everywhere. Tip it up on its side here just a little bit so I can take these out without it spilling everywhere. Too late. All right. It's not what I wanted, but we got her. I think most of the stuff I'm losing out of here is the residual stuff that was in the line in the tube here. And then I got to put this little adapter piece, because it's a little bit smaller than the back. The front one, which is actually the rear brakes, is a little bit smaller, so I got to put this adapter. And then this comes with the master cylinder. Put this guy in, lock it down. All right, let's get this in the truck. All right, we got this guy tipped on its side because it doesn't leak out. But this is where, if you had an extra set of hands, it'd be great. So we got to put it in the firewall, put the bolts in before we can hook these lines up back up to the master cylinder. So you're going to lose a little bit. It's going to drip a little bit. So just a heads up on that. All right, guys, so now it's a good time to wipe up any kind of residual brake fluid you see anywhere. You just don't want it on anything that's painted because it'll just corrode the paint. I figured that out on my last vehicle, how that works, so I will here to attest that it does ruin your paint. All right, guys, this is where I would tell you about putting the push rod back in for the brake master cylinder, but mine's actually a little too short that came with this master cylinder. I'm gonna have to get an adjustable length one because this pedal needs to be out here. And when I put that bolt in, it actually pulls the push rod out of the master cylinder, which that isn't gonna work. So I need to get a longer one of those, so I'll take care of that. So the last piece of this puzzle would be to bleed the brake system now that we got the new master cylinder on there and we got some air in the lines by taking the lines off. But like you saw, I've got that push rod. I got to get a different push rod length. So, and besides, you guys know how to do the brakes. You know, you do the farthest one away from the master cylinder, then the next farthest, and so on. So I'll have a buddy come over and help me. He'll push the pedal and we'll do all that. But that's not something you guys really care about on this video. But at least you know you got to do it, right? After you get that master cylinder put in there. For this particular unit here, I was trying to find, I actually saw one that had two different push rod lengths, two different push rods that came with the master cylinder. And I'm wondering if I should have bought that unit instead. Maybe it would have had the right length piece for me, but that's okay. I'll get adjustable unit one, we'll get it put in there, and then away you go. So cool. I guess, again, that was supposed to be about the master cylinder and getting that swapped out. It ended up being a little bit more because of that pedal assembly problem that I had, but that's okay. We got that taken care of. And if you guys have the same problem, you're noticing that pedal assembly is wearing, and that rod that goes across there that everything pivots on is starting to wear out. It's a really good way to do that. And like I said, I got that other video on how to do all that. You guys can find that on my channel and go from there. So cool. All right, guys, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. And if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out. And we'll see you in the next one.